Greetings to all the lovely ladies and gentlemen out there. I'm your host, the Gent, and we have a very special episode of Opera Glasses today because I actually have some guests in the Opera Box. So would you boys like to introduce yourselves?
Why, sure. My name is Justin Guillou. You might know me as the co-host of XenoChat, a podcast about anything Xeno-related. That'd be Xenogears, Xenosaga, or Xenoblade. We get a whole bunch of people to come on our podcast and talk about cool things with Xenosaga. You can check us out on iTunes and Spotify. So yeah, check us out on there. I'm also an anime news manager for a website known as OperationRainfall.com. If you like anime and video games, check us out.
Hi, my name is Sam. I like sushi and video games. I also run a podcast called The Silver Screen Fiends, and you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and probably in your grandma's basement. But yeah, so I'm really excited to do this. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, my pleasure. Sam and Justin are two very dear friends of mine. We share a lot of common interests, anime, video games, and Sam and I have a particular affinity for film, and something that we all have in common, which I think everybody has in common within probably our age range, is cartoons.
Yes.
And this is not something that usually gets brought up on the Gent show, since that is strictly anime. But I wanted to detract from my usual weeby talks.
Your weekly weebies.
and talk a little bit about animation from other places in the world.
Great.
Well, first of all, we need some cereal.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let me just, Sam, edit in sound of cereal being poured in. Thanks.
Okay.
So, I would imagine that we have some similarities in our favorite cartoons, but I definitely think that we have some that stand out to each other. So, I guess I'll ask a few questions to get us going.
Sure thing.
Am I being interrogated?
Yes.
Okay.
You're also being tied down.
I'm neither concerned nor flattered by this. So go ahead.
So let's start with what would you say is one of your
Looney Tunes.
Let me finish the question.
Okay, fine.
What would you say is one of the defining cartoons that really influenced you as a kid?
Are you finished?
Let's start with Justin.
All right. Since I'm not as rude as Sam is.
Yeah, fuck you.
So, I would, obviously the easy answer would be Tom and Jerry. But if I was to not pick Tom and Jerry, I would probably say it would be Powerpuff Girls.
Nice.
That's a good pick.
Choice.
I really, really enjoyed Powerpuff Girls as a kid. I actually liked the characters a lot. I found them somewhat relatable, which I know it's probably going to sound weird. Oh, he's a guy. How can he relate to a bunch of girls? No, I really enjoyed their personality. I like their, all the anime influences in it. It's really interesting to look at with Powerpuff Girls. I really, really love the music. I love all the villains.
Oh, for sure.
It's just like a really, really well put together show.
It's, I believe, famous internet celebrity Max Gilardi of Hot Diggity Demon fame, and also known for the Brain Dumps.
Shameless plug.
Yes, I know.
He's great, though. I love him.
I love Max's animation.
Yeah.
But he did an episode of Brain Dump where he talked about Powerpuff Girls.
The new story, right?
Yeah. He was talking about the differences between the new show and the old show, and why the new one sucks.
Yeah.
And I understand where he's coming from with that, because the old show was a lot of everything that we were raised to not want to see. Like, we were not raised to enjoy, action and gore and violence and all these ridiculous things that were all compiled into the show about three little girl superheroes who really just kicked so much ass.
Right.
That is true. Yes.
And they enjoyed it. That's the one thing that I really love about it. It's like they're so unapologetically violent.
But the thing is, the cathartic violence aside, it was always justified.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
They were always trying to do the right
sometimes,
thing. For the most part.
There are a few instances.
Yeah,
where
but I would say 90% of the time it was
Yeah.
justified.
They were trying to do the right thing.
Yes, and that's important.
And I think Powerpuff Girls is definitely an answer that all of us could probably have because
For sure. Yeah.
that was definitely something that hit all of us. I think. Let me think of a favorite episode of Powerpuff Girls from me because that would be something I'd like to chime in with.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I think one of my favorites, because this also sort of links back into my love for horror, is the... I don't know the exact name of the episode, but the one with Abracadaver.
Oh, yeah.
The zombie magician.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Like, that episode is scary.
Yeah.
It's genuinely freaky. And, like, the design of Abracadaver is really awesome.
Right.
And
Yep.
I think that subconsciously that was one of the main feeding pieces of why I have burgeoned into someone who really enjoys horror as a genre and also enjoys drawing with a very horror vibe to my art.
Yeah, I would say between that and Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Oh yeah, we'll get to Courage.
Sure.
Courage is a good one.
But I would say a favorite episode of mine would be where Bubbles gets in a tiff with Blossom and Buttercup, and she's kind of like lamenting in it, and she has
And she goes hardcore.
what is it? What is it?
Yeah, that's a good
Octi,
one.
the doll,
the
Octi.
doll.
But him actually possesses the doll and starts talking
Yeah,
to her,
yeah.
and he's like convincing her, like, "Hey, they're messing with you. Like, you gotta rise up and be on your own." And then eventually turns into like this giant thing.
And I think it's actually has one of the like creepiest reverb lines from him, where he's literally just like, "No, Bubbles."
Yes, I remember
and
that.
he's like burning away, and it's like it's actually just creepy.
It is
and I love
creepy.
and
Yeah.
that's one thing that I think Powerpuff Girls did super well.
Yep.
It wasn't afraid to be weirdly scary,
No, not at all.
which I think is
Same with a
really
lot
cool.
of shows back then. Yeah.
The 90s in particular was
The 90s
like
were an
very-
experimental time.
Yeah,
in
because
animation.
it was a mixture of like gross out times and action times and scary times because a lot of the people that grew up with animated movies in the 80s that were very like Don Bluth movies were actually kind of scary a lot of the time.
A little bit,
like,
yeah.
Like I don't care what anybody says, the American Tail ending with the mouse of mitts, the
Yeah.
weird rotoscope creepy thing at the end, that still gives me fucking the creeps.
True. Yeah.
And I think that influenced a lot of people who ended up in the industry in the 90s.
Yeah. I think Don Bluth in general was just very.
for
Oh,
sure.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And what about you?
I think so. It's hard to pick a favorite Powerpuff Girls episode. I could think of like 3 that I really like. But I guess if I was a pick of the 3, actually, I'll just say them.
Sure.
So I really like the Disco Ball episode.
Blame it on the boogie.
Blame it on the boogie. I
my
love
God.
that
I
one. That's
forgot
a
about
really
that.
fun one.
That is a good one.
I love that one. I also love the one where the mayor is blindfolded throughout the whole episode.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
such a good. That is such a good. Like venture into a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
That
That's
I,
what I love
that I
about
think
it.
is one of the best ways to do certain shows when you're like, what do we do to be a little original? Like
Sure.
do the show completely from one person's perspective, but do it weird.
Right.
Yep.
I love that. I love that episode because like it's like a typical Powerpuff Girls episode, but you don't see it.
And like
Right.
you're wondering why everybody's laughing all the
Right.
time, and it's just so
It's-
funny.
that's such a
Yeah,
cool one.
that's a good one.
And then the last one would be the Smiths.
with the finish your pee, Professor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God, I
That is-
love that episode.
that is one of
There's
the
so
best.
much tension in that episode.
I love like when
Oh.
you're seeing like the backstory of this family, like he's just going through his every single day. It's
Yeah,
just
you
the
think
same
it's like
thing.
normal.
Yeah.
And
then-
I think one of my favorite bits from that episode, besides the "Eat your pee, Professor" bit, is earlier when the professor's just like, "Oh yes, my life is perfect. I think I'm going to sing the My Life is Perfect song. My life is
Holy
so
shit.
perfect."
that is a great episode.
Oh god,
Yeah, I think if I had to pick of like those 3, it would probably be that one.
Yeah.
that one is great.
That's a top one, definitely.
Oh god, that's some good.
But there's so many really, really
There
good
really is.
ones.
There really is.
What about when the professor gets turned into a dog? Bow 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 bow.
And he's
Bow, bow.
and he's properly angular, like he always is.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it. Oh my
I know,
God.
and of course, another one of my favorites is the one where it's a rainy day.
Oh, the rainy day one.
No
is
one's
good.
doing any villain
Right.
stuff, and the professor ends up dressing up as Bubbles. and that's just such a good bit where he's just like, "You've got to be kidding me." and how he gets out of it is always like one of my favorite little just fly, pow, bye. Just getting the fuck out. That is some of the funniest stuff.
Yeah, but I love everything that Craig McCracken was doing in that show because it was very reminiscent of Genny Tartakovsky and Tartakovsky rather. And another show I liked by McCracken was Foster's Home.
Oh yeah,
Which
is also
I feel like you either loved it or hate it.
Which is also Lauren Fest, I want to say is her name, who of course went on to do the illustrious show My Little Pony.
Right.
True
That.
that.
Magic.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it seems like we're having quite the Cartoon Network theme going on here, but.
For now.
But we do have some love for some Nickelodeon titles as well.
absolutely, yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think that'll lead into my next question. Since we talked about a Cartoon Network show, and I know that I sort of skipped over us answering something of our favorite shows for Sam and I think I'll lead this into this question of what's a Nickelodeon show that meant something to you when you were a kid and still holds up that you think?
Well, can it be a multi-part answer?
Sure.
Okay, so I would say for the first real example, because my father and I bonded over it, would be Doug.
Okay.
And I feel like, so you look back on that show, like, you know, I'm 27, so I look back on that show now, and it's so wildly stupid and silly because the show's just about an 11-year-old kid who is just trapped in his own psychological hell. Like, it's all just fabrications of the mind.
Yeah.
So like, but when you're a kid, you relate so hard to it,
Yeah.
and then you grow up and you're like, well, wait, I understand where they were coming from, but now that you see it from a more mature perspective, you're kind of like, wow, this was really silly. But I think it still kind of holds up.
I love looking back to Doug for certain things. I definitely think in more recent times, Mr. Dink has become a meme.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which, hold on, Douglas. But I love certain things about Doug while also not really caring for the show too much.
Right, yeah.
It was one of I think I missed the ship on Doug by like a year because I was more focused on Cartoon Network around that age.
Sure.
But I think that some of the stuff that I remember fondly of Doug were like the band that the sister was in.
Oh, yes.
I don't.
Oh, yeah,
remember
Judy, yeah.
I don't remember the exact name of the band off the top of my head.
I don't know that band, but I love the Beats.
The Beats.
That
That might have been it. That might have been
Was
it.
Judy... I don't think Judy was in the Beats.
I think she was. Wasn't she involved in the band in some
I don't
way?
think she
Or was she
was.
just like her
Maybe she
favorite
was a
band?
group. I know that was Doug's favorite band.
Because I think she was like a friend of the band or something. Because they were like a high school.
Didn't she might have appeared in some of the music videos they released?
Yeah, maybe that was it.
Because
Really? I don't remember that. Maybe it's entirely possible.
Because
My memory is shit, so...
Yeah, I think
because like the songs that they did were just like don't that's
Need More Allowance was one of them.
Need More Allowance. Which I remember fondly, specifically. Which I remember specifically for an AMV Hellbit with Shin-Chan.
Oh, God.
Which is hilarious to me.
Banging on a trash can.
Exactly.
Is that the one you were
That's
singing?
what I was
on the
thinking.
street
Which weirdly led me to think of Hey Arnold because
that was going to be the second part of mine.
Because that's one that we share.
Right, so what I was going to say, like, yeah, Doug, I love most of it. Some parts are just, like, more of a bonding mechanism between my father and I. But Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
Super real show.
Yeah.
Super fucking
100%.
real.
That is definitely
Like, you
my
could relate
favorite.
to every part. You could sympathize with any character. And it was all... It got dark. But as a
Incredibly.
kid, you're kind of like, oh yeah, like I kind of relate to that. But then you look back in and you're like, oh, Pigeon Man like kind of wanted to kill himself, or like Monkey Man was just like a lost soul trying to fulfill a fantasy, or like the was the kid obsessed with the beat? Chocolate Boy.
Chocolate Boy.
And then he went on the beats. And he was just a guy who succumbed to addiction. Like, every story had something relatable.
And that's kind of what's interesting about Hey Arnold was that I don't think you had a whole lot of cartoons on Nickelodeon or even Cartoon Network that showed characters at their worst. And Hey Arnold kind of wasn't afraid to do that.
Not at all.
And when you were a kid, like, you don't always... Because when you're a kid, you kind of want positive influences. You always want like a positive role model that you can look up to.
Yeah.
When you see a character that isn't necessarily, in the best shape, you might not necessarily think much of it. But then when you're older, you start to think, like that's totally a thing. I might know somebody who's like this.
And I think that leads into what I would say is that makes the characters not just specifically role models, but it makes them human.
It makes them human.
Which is what ties them to you even better, because I remember so much about Hey Arnold is just really fantastic stuff.
Sure, absolutely.
Like, and it's one of those series that feels like it could be happening anywhere, anytime. The only thing that really ages it as much as it does is Big Bob's Beeper Emporium.
Yeah,
Big Bob's Beeper. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Which of course is brought up in the.
That's why it's funny in the new movie.
The movie, yeah.
Yeah.
But it aged well too, because
absolutely
these kids feel like kids that still do what they do today.
Yep.
And every like you said before, every character is very defined. So you have all the kid characters, you have all of the members of the boarding house, you have all the faculty from the school, and the various like one-off characters that left a weird impact on you. And you somehow found a person in your life that could probably relate to them quite a bit.
If they were not a carbon copy.
Yeah, like I definitely think that I could see my grandfather in Grandpa.
Yeah.
Because he told these wild stories that you could question the truth behind them, but you want to believe them because like that's just great.
Yeah.
And who's always got encouraging words for you, and it just has this unapologetic love for his grandson.
Yeah.
But then you have this opposite spectrum where you have Bob Pataki, where he's this really sort of neglectful father who puts his one daughter on a pedestal while he really doesn't care about
his
other.
Abusive
and
too.
then the mom is just as bad too.
Yeah, she's like depressed, and she always got a Bloody Mary,
and of course that you also have Olga, who's just. Her emotions are never anything below 100% in any end of the spectrum. And while it's hilarious to watch a lot of the time, people that act like that.
Are that way,
and it's fun to see in a comedic sense, but it's also real to see because you can connect a line between the character and somebody and you empathize a lot, quite a bit.
Side note, I really like the meme where it's just Olga sobbing in the bed and it says Beethoven in D minor plays. And like I perfectly visualized that moment in the show.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Hey Arnold.
No, but like there's a certain sense of diversity with Hey Arnold's cast that you just don't see in a lot of shows
of that
time.
Diversity.
And also just even since.
Yeah.
It
encouraged
diversity and embraced it.
Yeah.
It's like this is the kind of show that I would show to a kid these days because I feel like this is the kind of show that could prep you for life because it's like these are the kind of people that you could meet when you grow up. Yeah, you might not understand it now, but this is the kind of stuff that's going on.
Like just looking at the kids in particular, like Arnold is just a little blonde white kid, but his best friend is an African American, and he is also decent friends with an Asian.
Yeah,
and like there's ethnic diversity in the cast.
Yeah, it's great.
As well as religious, because
you had Harold.
Harold is Jewish.
Yeah.
Which is also
and I like
think
that
it's fun that they touch upon.
Yeah, and I was about to say it's cool that they had episodes with Harold where they
yeah,
actually do
I
go
like
into
the
that.
bar mitzvah
Yeah.
episode. Yeah,
And-
because everyone could relate to that. Well, Jewish people,
Right.
rather,
In
but, like,
particular, yeah.
right. But yeah, it's very real.
And it also didn't shy away from people with different body types as well. Like
yeah,
let's see, trying to remember, Patty, is it? Who's the big
the
girl?
bully, yeah.
yeah, it's Patty.
bully.
Yep.
Yeah, and like she clearly has these problems with her body image a lot of the time.
Sure.
But you have episodes where you see her in a different light, like where Rhonda, who is this prim, proper, rich girl, goes to these classes for etiquette, and she's a snob. But Patty, who is supposedly this big bully character and a bigger girl, is actually much more attuned to proper etiquette and being polite, and it puts Rhonda in her place.
Yeah.
And and that's one of my favorite episodes for that reason. Like it's which leads me into almost every character gets at least like 5 episodes devoted to
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Which is even more special for this series because that fleshes out these characters to an even bigger degree.
Yeah.
Because a lot of series don't do that.
No, they don't.
They will
Absolutely true.
focus on a specific character, and they will just shoehorn them into the plot. Because you'll have huge swaths of episodes where Arnold isn't even involved.
Yeah. That's true.
And yeah, like,
Yeah, it's really interesting because like you get to see these characters in all sorts of different kinds of situations. Like I said before, you see them at their best, you also see them at their worst, and I think that's what really does wonders for making them appear human. Because when you see them in all these situations, you know that it's going to be a realistic reaction to it.
I think a good example of that in an episode is the one where Phoebe it gets put ahead 2 grades.
Yes,
And you see her both at her
Yes.
best and at her worst in the same
It
episode.
was a little bit scary.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a fish out of water story.
Yeah.
But it's a fish out of water stories at both ends because she's being treated as she's too smart for the people that she is normally around, but she doesn't feel smart enough or feel welcome in the other environment.
Yeah.
And you can see the struggle that she has,
Yeah.
which I think leads to the fact that I think Phoebe's probably one of my favorite characters
I think
in
so,
the show
too.
because she has some of the best episodes, like
Yeah.
the one with the trophy, the writing trophy that she plagiarized to get, and
Yeah.
like that's another one where it's just
I
like,
understand the statue keeps talking to her.
which is creepy.
It's kind of like the Telltale Heart a little bit.
Yeah. And there's just so many great
Yeah.
episodes of Hey Arnold that also I think it's another fun thing to note that Hey Arnold does a lot of culturally interesting stuff, like the whole episode with the opera. Like,
Right.
It reminds me of Looney Tunes stuff.
Yes.
which is a lot of fun, and it actually sort of teaches you a tiny bit about opera, but not too much.
Yeah.
While just being generally funny.
Sure.
And of course, I think all of our collective favorite episode is obviously Eugene.
Yes, I think. Yes. Jesus Christ.
Because when life gives you lemons, dance.
Dance like there's ants in your bed.
A muskrat.
Which Tim Curry makes a appearance in that.
Oh my god, that episode is so good.
I think another like what's cool about Hey Arnold, just to kind of add to what we're saying, is you have the main cast that are really fleshed out, but I love how they also try to flesh out like the one-off characters. And one of the best episodes that you could see that in is the subway episode when it gets stuck.
Oh yeah.
Oh, right. We're here on the subway.
And I
Wholesome.
I think that it's also funny that like members of the random community get their own episodes
They get
too,
their own episodes,
yeah.
which is hilarious. Like
Yeah.
like Mr. Green, the butcher, gets an episode about him, and like you have stuff with all of the members of the boarding house, which I think
like Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar and
Oscar.
Oh yeah, when he tries to learn how to read, and
right,
that was sad.
Yeah, and my favorite amongst the boarders, Mr. Wynn.
Yeah,
Mr. Wynn.
Yeah,
who gets some of the best episodes.
Especially number 1, the country singing one, and number 2, when he reunites with his daughter,
which is the Christmas special.
Yeah,
which is special.
I fucking almost cried.
Yeah, which is special around this time of year because that's one of those episodes that I go back to every year as one of those Christmas specials that I like to watch. It will never not make me cry.
Yeah, it's super emotional
because it's real. Like, it's the fact that he was separated from his daughter during the Korean War. Like,
right.
Or was he Korean or Vietnamese? Maybe it was Vietnamese.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe Vietnamese.
Because either way, it's so sad and impactful, and it's one of those situations where it's a real world problem. Like, this was something that happened to people in the real world, and
he just had to kind of accept it throughout time.
Yeah, he's from Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
And he just had to spend his whole life like trying to accept it, but there was a pain deep down inside.
Like he would never see his daughter again.
Right.
But then here Arnold goes to such lengths to find his daughter.
He sacrifices his holiday to help out Mr. Wynn.
And I think one of the best things that they did in that episode was the music with it too, because like it's just this really sad Vietnamese, like, indigenous music that just it brings this strong sadness to mind when you hear it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super powerful stuff. Yeah, Hey Arnold definitely ranks up there with me as far as impact goes.
So I guess that'll lead into me bringing up a cartoon that I think influenced me quite a bit, being Courage.
Oh, yeah.
Which is collectively another one of our favorites.
Yeah, for sure.
Courage is just everything I ever... The things I do for love. Just everything about Courage was something that I really loved. I loved the characters. I loved the situations. I loved the horror aspects of it. I loved the humor of it. The designs for the characters were always fun.
And Dilworth took a big risk doing a show like that.
Because it's... How do you make a horror show for kids?
Right, it was super out of left field.
And you know, this is coming after Are You Afraid of the Dark and the Goosebumps shows, but those were live action, which you could understand being a little bit easier to work with.
And also, those were a little bit goofier.
It was like a campfire ghost story format, but with Courage, it was like flat out scary.
Yeah, like I think one of the... Like, I don't think that this episode is in particular scary, but I know that everybody usually goes to this one for, like, the one with the Return the Slab episode.
Yeah.
Like, everybody goes to that for the scariest episode because it's just weird CGI.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, the only reason I found that one creepy was because, like, the way they animated it was just so different and just kind of odd. It just kind of pops out. Like,
but for me... I think the scariest episode of Courage is probably, like, I want to say it's one of the last episodes, if not the last episode, the You're Not Perfect episode.
Yeah.
Because that is just full of not only, like, horror, but real-life horror.
Yeah.
Because it's all about how Courage can't do everything.
Yeah.
And he has to come to terms with it, and that's a very human problem. And we'll probably return to this statement over and over again, but when you actually have a human problem in a character that you connect with that character all the better.
Yeah, and just to kind of peel back that onion a little bit, the reason it's more impactful is because Courage is a dog. And throughout society, it's kind of a staple that they're your companion, and they're there for your loyalty, and they have much less of a lifespan than the human. So they're dedicated to helping out that human, especially since it's Muriel. Well, how did I forget that? Especially considering Muriel adopted him. He was like in a little alleyway.
He was in a trash can.
Right, in a trash can. And she took him in and made him who he was. So, like, he has this eternal debt, and when he finds out, like, hey, most of the time he can't help out, he just sinks to rock bottom. And that's where it, like, really cuts deep.
Which leads me into another one of the best episodes, which is also one of the scariest ones. The one with the cat in the really creepy masks. No, not cats.
Oh,
but the cat woman with the weird mask.
Oh,
and the one who has a bunny friend who's in like this domestic abuse relationship with this Doberman.
Oh, I think I remember that.
I do vaguely remember.
Yeah.
It's scary because it's a completely real world problem, and it's played out like a real world problem.
Yep.
And it's horrifying. Like, it's scary because this happens to people every day.
Yeah, and for every 1,000 cases that are blown open by the public, there's like 1 million that are subdued.
Yeah, that just don't even...
Yeah. Now, you're going to laugh at me when I say what I think is one of the scariest episodes, and that's Cousin Freddy.
Oh,
and the
Freaky Fred is actually a
Freaky Fred,
weird episode.
And the reason being is because they had an interesting turn. On the surface, it appears like kind of like a comical approach to the psychopath, but like anybody who's dealt with somebody that manic and crazy will know that literally in the snap of a finger, they could like murder someone or harm themselves. And throughout the episode, I thought like, what if he literally tries to kill Courage? Or what if he tries to harm himself? He's locked in a bathroom with him.
Courage. Your hair.
Right, like, it seemed comical at times, and then, like, they told his backstory, but to me the scariest part was the fact he was locked alone in the room with this psychopath, and it looked like he could have killed him.
No, that's...
So, yeah, to me, I love that. Overall, that's one of my favorite episodes.
That's a good one.
I would say.
That's a really good one. I think I might actually even pick that one, too, because I just remember... It's just like, I love that unsettling atmosphere with Courage. There's everything about it, like, even the music, too, like, when he runs to, like, the computer... Yeah, and it's like that panic music, like dun, 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 dun. And it's just like,
or the other one where it's just like, dun, 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 yeah,
ooh,
you twit,
yeah, dog spit.
And it's also great because like he would always try to go on the computer and like look things up, and then the computer would just give him sass.
Yeah,
and oh god, that really just solidified the computer as like one of the funniest characters.
Yeah, for sure.
He was definitely the comic relief of the show. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another episode that I thought was scary. I'm trying to not think of like the real world ones because those are the ones that stick out to me the most. But like I'm trying to think of the more like fantastical ones.
Yeah.
But before I get to one of those, I will go to another real world one where it's Eustace. Just has this storm cloud over his head, and he's just being so negative, and that's just Eustace
one.
being Eustace.
Yeah,
and it's less horror, and it's more like you said, it's a sad episode because Eustace has been painted as this really mean, really jerky character
for no reason,
who has no redeeming qualities.
Right.
And this is one of the few episodes that gives him any level of humanity.
Yeah.
And it's special because you see him as a little, like he's just this little kid, and he's saying how the sun's so hot and he wishes he had a hat, and he gives his younger self a hat, and that's like, it's such a touching moment for a character that you usually just hate to death.
Right.
But that's what makes that episode special, and I think that's another one that stands out. But a fantastical one to me is definitely either the puppets one.
Yeah.
Where the great Fusil comes and he puts like spirit strings on Muriel and Eustace and turns them into marionettes. Which, by the way, I love how in half the episodes of Courage, like Eustace and Muriel are they're dead.
Yeah,
Especially
basically.
Eustace.
Like, they're just dead.
Yeah.
But, like, the world always resets.
Yeah.
Which is just
Eustace especially
hilarious.
because, like, they just straight up kill him off at times.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say a good lighthearted one for me is Little Muriel.
Oh, my
Oh, little
God.
Muriel.
More cheese and macaroni.
Yeah, less macaroni, and then she just smacks the plate.
I hate macaroni and cheese.
I think that's an example of like a lighthearted one because a lot of them get
Yeah,
really
there's some
serious.
really
What was
good
the one with,
comedy
like,
ones.
I have a gif of this up right now. What was the one with, like, the photographer?
Oh, it was a spoof of Quentin Tarantino. I forgot-
Benton Tarantella.
Yeah, and that was scary because then they resurrect the actor
And the animation of him rising from the grave is actually like really fluid and
Yeah.
weird, and it's just ugh.
I was gonna bring that one up.
Yeah, because
actually.
I remember I remember that episode, and then I forgot about it until I saw this gif right here. But
He's like, "You're gonna be in pictures." Oh my god, it was so fucking creepy.
and he talks like a zombie. Like
Yeah.
he has this very like he's talking with his chin.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't have a throat to work
Yeah,
with, and
it-
I think that's such a cool.
It was unsettling. It was
Yeah.
cool, but it was definitely unsettling.
Let's see what's like. I'm trying to think of a good comedy episode though. 'Cause
oh man, the Hunchback one.
that's actually a funny one.
That's a good
a funny
example,
one.
yeah.
I
You,
remember
sir,
that.
are bald. Like, that's a good one. And that's also a cute one.
Yeah.
Because that one's a lot of...
Yeah, because you're like, hey, it's this totally relatable dude, but like,
Yeah, like,
Eustace is being an asshole. To
Yeah.
him.
Also, can I just mention Muriel's sick sitar skills?
True.
Like, she has this affinity for a hippie instrument, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, Courage, Arnold, and Powerpuff Girls are definitely three that really mean a lot to us.
For
so
sure.
let's go into a new question to switch things up.
And recording.
So I would say that the next question I want to do is, what is a modern cartoon that you're into?
Ah. Okay. So what would you classify as modern?
Yeah.
Let's say, that's actually tough because
Yeah.
I'd say post 2000. I'd say that's modern enough.
Post 2000.
So like starting with 2010, or you mean post like the year 2000?
Post the year 2000.
Oh, okay.
Because you get SpongeBob out of the way because.
Oh yeah, we don't even
I wouldn't
need
say
to-
I wouldn't say that's exactly a modern cartoon, even though like SpongeBob to all of us is a little special, and obviously, rest in peace, Stephen Hillenburg, who
for sure
brought some of
He was
some of the
number
best
one.
laughs.
Yeah,
He was number one.
And really, seriously, his impact was immeasurable.
So we'll start with you this time, Sam, for this one. So what would you say is a cartoon post the year 2000 that stands out to you the most, if not to everybody, and why?
Okay, well, this is going to be a case of just me. Well, actually, you as well, and I think you'll be happy with the choice.
I'm sure.
Which is Chowder.
Oh, gotta love it.
And the reason being, because not only is it a masterfully crafted show by C.H. Greenblatt, and literally there's no such thing as a fourth wall. He goes to the eighth wall, and it's beautifully written, and it's whimsical and self-aware, but also the fact that really, if it wasn't for Chowder, and also in the same turn, Flapjack, we wouldn't have had this new renaissance of wacky, obscure cartoons. Because right after the movement of Chowder and Flapjack, immediately came Adventure Time and Regular Show. And then from there came all these new wacky, push-the-envelope shows that everyone is obsessed with.
And some of those are... A lot of people are going to probably give flack for this statement since... cartoons nowadays are a very touchy subject.
That's true.
You can't go anywhere without hearing somebody complaining how one cartoon sucks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And first of all, I don't like the hate on certain cartoons because you need to experience the cartoon before you make the judgment. You can't look a cartoon on face value and say that it sucks without at least giving it some level of a shot.
Which is how I feel about anything in life.
Yes. So, like, when I say that I don't like the Powerpuff Girls reboot or the Teen Titans Go, I mean it because I took my time to sit down and watch a little bit of the show, experience it, and make some judgments, not simply based on the hive mind value of what a lot of people are doing nowadays. And I understand that reboots are a very popular thing right now because it's we're in a transitioning age where a lot of people who grew up with a lot of the cartoons that we're talking about are in the animation industry, and they want to bring those cartoons back to mainstream, but they have to do it in their own way, otherwise it's not going to work, which leads to something like the Thundercats reboot from 2011.
Getting to this,
like the one from several years ago, which was actually a great show,
but was severely overshadowed by everything going on,
and not just even that. It was just poor time.
It got a really bad time slot.
It was,
and it wasn't marketed well either.
And the execs were focusing mainly on the toys, which, while the animation, the writing was doing fantastic with the series, it was just left to rot.
That's
so
true.
I'm hoping that whatever comes of this comedy show, Thundercats Roar, that it does a proper job to bring homage to the classic feeling of the 80s show, which, by the way, love the 80s show. It's campy, it's 80s, it's very focused on like what was popular in the 80s.
For sure.
It does not hold up a lot.
That's true.
There's some it holds up better than a lot of 80s shows.
Oh, that's not saying much though.
Like, a lot of those cartoons from that era are actually kind of hilariously bad. But people always paint them as like the paragon of the best cartoons. But Thundercats was one of the few that did okay because they tried to be original with designs for characters and the plot and just overall the writing. Up until like season 2, when they started to actually like bring in marketing tools in the show, which was awful. But that's my view on the reboot situation. But going back to what you were saying with Chowder, like, if we didn't have that that special resurgence in the weird and whimsical, and really odd, we wouldn't have some of the really good stuff that we have today.
No, absolutely. I think that they really did pave the way. I don't think that that's a bold statement.
Like, Steven Universe is a very solid show. Of this particular time. What is it? All in the House or something like that? Loud House? Loud House.
Which, by the way, recently the creator was like accused of sexual harassment.
Jesus. But like, it sucks because that show is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And you also have like, I'll say it, I think Clarence is funny.
I do like Clarence. A lot of people don't, but I find it's to a lot of people the humor falls flat, but like I think it's one of those things, like you said earlier, you can't just take it at face value. You gotta give it a shot, even if it's like 2 episodes, and you'll find something to laugh at, I'm sure.
Yeah, and there's some new stuff coming out too, like Craig of the Creek, which looks adorable. I love the way that looks. And one of my favorites of recent time, Over the Garden Wall.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which I showed to you guys not too long ago.
Yeah, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that headed by Pendleton Ward?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but it's such a special series to me.
It's whimsical.
And it's short. It's more of like a TV special. Yeah. Which you don't see very often. You don't see like a mini series crop up and then just it's done. It told its story, and we don't need to do anything more with it, because if we did, it would ruin what we established.
Right, but I think that's wildly important. I think people these days try to just either they cancel things before they reach their prime, or they try to drag it through the mud. And I think something like Over the Garden Wall, they had a mission, they completed it, had great reception. That's all there is to it. Like, I couldn't imagine them trying to do a sequel or a spin-off because it doesn't need it. It's a period piece. It's like a Richard Linklater movie. You know what I'm saying?
It reminds me of when Cartoon Network did when they would have pilot episodes for a bunch of series, and then they would have the people that watched it, the kids, decide what show they wanted to watch.
Right, which is how Billy and Mandy came to fruition. It was Evil Kung Carney, and then from there,
Nick did the same thing too in the late '90s. Like that's kind of how I think Fairly Odd Parents started out of that.
Yeah. Butch Hartman is
Chalk Zone 2. I think was also part of it.
Rudy to Rudy. That is. Can I just say that is a show that either gets shit or is so overlooked, but I loved Chalk Zone.
It's one of those,
it was unique.
It's and I think that sort of ties into Chowder because it had a very unique art style.
For sure. I used to draw Snap all the time in school because it was so easy.
Well, it's like a Blue from Foster's.
Right.
He was such a simple character, but it was a timeless design, in a way. So you have similar ways of doing the art in a series like that, where you take a specific aspect of what you want the art to look like, and then you just ride it out, which I believe Chowder did really well with. Like all of the clothing and textures were all like this pattern, and they didn't draw around the pattern. They just
That's like one of my favorite aspects of the show is how unique something like that was. Like that was a creative decision that worked. And a lot of shows, they're like scared sometimes to take those liberties.
Yeah, and God, I'm just trying to think. Like Chowder has so many really wonderful episodes, and it knew, like, when it was canceled and they planned around the last episode to be like, okay, we're getting canceled, so let's just do exactly what we would want to do in the finale, and just make that, and then we won't feel bad about the fact that we were canceled.
Right, which was the fact that they went into the future. And Chowder was trying to raise his own apprentice.
I love the fact that the transition to the future was Chowder was singing the same note for like 20 years.
Yep.
and Mung actually mentions just like, you've been singing that note for 20 years, Chowder. 20 long years. And like, that is the best kind of joke.
Yeah, I think, not to harp too much on it But I think praise is something that should be here for that kind of show. And but yeah, I mean, as far as modern, I would say that I'd also probably say Flapjack, although maybe not as much. It's a lot more obscure. But there's been, a lot more examples. Like I think Gumball is a pretty good example.
I love Gumball. Like,
yeah,
I know that there's a little controversy with some stuff that Gumball does. I know, like the OC episode where they were sort of making fun of poking fun at people doing OCs of characters that basically look exactly like the character that they were trying to emulate and are just weird for the sake of being weird. Like, that's a fun thing, but I understand why people would get upset with it. But like most of the time, Gumball has some of the funniest stuff I've seen in any cartoon.
The humor is wild.
Like, and no episode feels the same. Like,
yeah,
which leads from the fact that like no character looks the same. Like almost every character is done in a different art form or art style, and that is such a great way to do it.
And then they include 3D renders.
I was gonna say I like that. I also like the backgrounds.
Yeah,
Gumball.
The colors are really nice.
Cool. Yeah,
the colors actually remind me quite a bit of shows from the 90s. Like very like flat colors that focus on a lot of random details that you're not really focusing on.
Yeah.
So what would you say is one that you think stands out?
I think for me, it would probably be Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
which is one of my
That's
favorite
cool.
one of my favorite
this is-
television shows.
This is one I haven't seen actually.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I actually
I'm not a big superhero guy, but I've always had some level of appreciation in
Sure.
some way
Yeah.
Sure.
to superhero shows. So
like-
probably the one that means the one that is the only one that really means much to me is Batman the Animated Series.
and
yeah.
it's funny because it's funny you said it because Spectacular Spider-Man to me is one of the only superhero shows that actually comes close to reaching that.
Really?
In my opinion, at least. But it was just such an unfortunate thing because that show got canceled just as it was really starting to hit its peak.
That is true.
They got into the symbiote story, and it was really good.
Which is my favorite arc when done right. When it's not focused on Venom, I like the symbiote arc.
There's a lot of drama, and it starts off the show starts off really goofy. Peter Parker, he's really witty.
Yeah.
But it's not overly done. It's done in a believable way. When he's fighting a lot of the villains, he's making a lot of jokes and quips at them, but it never feels too over the top.
Sure.
It's never
And
overdone.
It's never overdone. And what it was great is you see his relationship with Gwen, and then eventually you see they get all the other characters in Mary Jane and the Osborns and all that, and it's just the way it's done is just done really well. And I think the best part about it is that it doesn't treat its viewerships like idiots.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately at the time Marvel, they wanted a show that where it was more obvious that it was for kids. They wanted something that they could quote unquote market to kids more.
Sure.
Whereas Spectacular Spider-Man, even though it was technically a kids show, it's clear that it was appealing more to an older demographic. I was watching that show when I was in high school, and I remember this one of the last shows I remember waking up early to watch on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
And yeah, that show, I am incredibly nostalgic for it. I absolutely love it. The music is great. The animation is fantastic.
I
Some of the
agree.
fight scenes are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I think I have one of the caveat for superhero shows that I do appreciate, and I think it's one that we all appreciate because it's the one that did it the best, and I think we can agree on that. Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Teen Titans had some really good
Yeah,
animation.
Teen Titans Go was really influential.
Yeah, right? Of course.
No,
right?
I love the original Teen Titans.
But
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first season of Teen Titans could be obnoxious at times.
Yeah, a little bit.
and it didn't hit its real stride until the second season.
I think when we got into the Terra arc, for example.
Yeah,
that was a really big one. Or the stuff with Raven. That was cool too.
And Brother Blood.
Yeah, yes.
Oof.
Yeah.
There's some really great arcs in Teen. In fact, I almost said Teen Titans actually.
That show got dark.
It got really dark. I almost said Teen Titans, but I picked Spectacular Spider-Man because I want to talk about that one quite a bit. And also I have a really bad story to share about that one.
No.
So here's the thing with not Teen Titans, with Spectacular Spider-Man. So the show was airing and it was getting a lot of praise. Critics online were loving it. People who were watching it were loving it.
Yeah.
It had a huge cult following, but I don't think Marvel liked it.
Weird.
And it in a weird way. I don't think it wasn't the show that they wanted to air. And it's funny because the show that they replaced it with was a little bit more lighthearted. Some people say that it does get a bit darker, but from what I saw, it seemed like a much more lighthearted show than Spectacular did.
Would you say that it felt much more safe?
I'd say it felt a little bit safer.
Because that's one of the problems that I think some companies have, which is they try and play it too safe.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened
Because this is a show that's on what network? This is
Spectacular. I believe that was on WB at the time,
It was WB.
and then it went to Disney XD.
Yeah.
because certain channels have certain desires when they have shows airing, and you can see that in what shows they air and what jokes they allow, which is tough when certain shows try and be the show that reaches out to every audience.
Yeah.
Because the execs don't want a show that hits every audience. They want to hit this audience, and they want that audience to stay the same.
Yeah.
Which it reminds me of how when My Little Pony Friendship is Magic came out, like Lauren Faust just, instead of trying to get away from the fact that the target demographic ended up being teenage boys or college age guys, they ended up leaning into that, and they were actually willing to make more adult decisions in the episodes, not to the degree of like going Harvey Birdman on the show or something, which would have been hilarious. Yes. But like, they knew what type of humor would resonate with the audience that was watching the show. They went for it, and that was actually a great season. I remember watching it when it first came out. I followed that show for a while. It had some of the funniest stuff of that time, and then they were like, no, we need to get back into the demographic we initially started in, and the show started to deteriorate, which sucks.
It does, and it's really unfortunate when that happens. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's kind of what happened here, was that unfortunately, while we love this show, like the people who watch the show, they are super passionate about it. There's still like a group on Facebook that's just like devoted to trying to like promote this show, bring awareness to it, like convince Marvel to bring it back.
Yeah.
But like, unfortunately, and this is so bad, like I still am in shock and disbelief that this happened. So this show, like season 1 aired, and then I think like in the middle of season 2, it got off of CW at the time, and then it went to Disney XD eventually.
Yeah.
But Canada, for some reason, got all the episodes, and they all aired up there. And so, but finally they said, okay, look, we're going to air the last couple episodes on Disney XD, and they were. And then we finally got to the finale of season 2. It ended at season 2. We got to the finale of season 2. They were airing it. My brother and I, we watched Disney XD, the live broadcast of the finale. It airs, no voiceovers.
Really?
Entire show went no voiceovers. Sound effects, animation, no voices.
That is weird.
Yep.
Wow.
They went the whole
that is
30-minute runtime, no voiceovers.
That isn't dickish. That's just full on dickweed.
It's crazy. Like, my brother and I were watching this. And we're so stupid. We're just like, oh, we'll try to turn on all the TVs we could turn on to try to give it ratings. Because we were just like, we really wanted to show support. So we were watching it live. And I remember, like, we were checking multiple TVs in the house to see if, like, maybe there's a problem with our TV. No. Like, all the other TVs, we could not hear any of the audio. We went on this forum. My brother still has, like, the thread archived, because it's just so ridiculous, and other people are complaining too. They're like, oh, what happened with this? What did they do? They sabotaged the show. How could they air with no voiceovers? And then my brother and I were just like, okay, they gotta fix it after commercial. First commercial goes by, still no voices. Second commercial goes by, still no voices. We get to like the last 5 minutes, still like nothing. And then I think like the last like 5 seconds, like you heard like a voice, and that was it. And that was like the whole show. And my brother and I, we were in shock. Like, we were just like, we can't believe they did this to the show.
Wow. They
actually did this to the show. It's so, and then of course, like the show got canceled, like officially was announced, oh yeah, this is canceled soon after. And it's just like, I can't believe the show went down this way.
Yeah. I feel that way too about SpiderMan, the new animated series, which was a CGI show. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Was that the MTV one?
I think so. It was like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it only had 1 season. And I think it got praise, but it was just one of those things where they were moving in a different direction. And I think actually recently ABC or CBS just picked it up for syndication, which will mean it's like the first time it's been aired in like 15
really?
years.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Like with this, it's kind of like a shame because you feel like more people would have appreciated it.
I feel like this show had so much potential. And you speak to anybody who's like watched the show, they'll tell you like this is one of the best superhero shows, one of the best iterations of Spider-Man. It's my personal favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like this show, like these 2 seasons have been better than any movie we've seen. It's been better than the 90s show. Like this had like there's so much room for like where the show could have gone. Mm-hmm. And just as it was hitting its stride, like they just had to go off and end it. It's just absolutely insane, and that's just a shame.
Yeah.
And actually, I kind of want to go back to a point that Phil was making earlier about like how unfortunately today we live in an era where people are looking at cartoons, they're not even watching them, they're just kind of making just these bold judgments about them. Generalizations. Yeah. And I actually want to bring up a show that started this year called Megaman Fully Charged. A lot of people saw that show, just took one look at this
face value.
Yeah, just took one look at like a picture of Megaman and was just like, oh, this is terrible. They ruined the franchise. This is absolutely horrible. And to be fair, I was actually really skeptical about it. I saw, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But one day, I actually decided to watch it. And I didn't hate it. In fact, I actually liked it quite a bit. And I'm actually behind a couple episodes, but I've been hearing that they've been really good lately. And I think it's a really interesting adaptation of Mega Man. It goes in a different direction, but it does honor the original series. It has a lot of the 8-bit music. I like how they gave the Robot Master's backstory. I like how they explore the side effects of Mega Man having weapons, which is something the games don't even do, which is actually really cool.
That's true.
I like how Mega Man has this little sidekick called like Mega Mini. He's like this little guy that lives inside of his helmet.
Oh,
and then when they go inside of Mega Man's helmet, there's all these details inside. Like they have a password screen, like the NES games in there. They have like the Robot Master Select screen in there. There's a password. It's so cool. Like there's all these neat little Easter eggs. They have like there's one episode with the museum where you see a painting that's drawn like the Mega Man X box art. It's like all these like neat little Easter eggs. They actually have some female Robot Masters now. Some of the old guys are back. Mm-hmm. They got the 8-bit music. It's just an all-around fun show.
But you gave it a chance.
I gave it a chance, and I actually liked it.
Yeah.
But it's just a shame that there's so many people on the internet who are just so convinced that this show is terrible.
Yeah.
That
they're not giving it a chance.
They're not giving it a chance, and when they do give it a chance, they're still so focused on trying to rip this apart that they don't want to accept that this isn't nearly as bad as I think it is.
Which isn't fair.
It's incredibly unfair. And what's even worse was that Cartoon Network gave it a terrible time slot. It was like Sunday at like 6:30 in the morning. Terrible time slot. The only reason I'm watching it is because I go online and watch it on the Cartoon Network website.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's like another thing that holds Cartoon Network shows back is that unfortunately, for shows like Steven Universe, I talk to a friend about this a lot, and she always says that the problem with Steven Universe is that it's targeting a demographic that might not necessarily have Cartoon Network.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Like a lot of people don't have cable, they don't have the Cartoon Network, so how are they going to watch Steven Universe unless they're pirating it or just going on some streaming website? And I think unfortunately, Cartoon Network, they really need to branch out with their shows, make them available on other platforms. I think that's one thing that's really holding them back. Like, I probably wouldn't have watched Mega Man Fully Charged had it not been on their website. And if I just didn't happen to have a cable box at home, I wouldn't be watching this show.
Yeah, that's true. There's maybe like 3 Cartoon Network shows on Hulu, and then the rest are just scattered across the universe.
Which is a tragedy for a lot of those shows because Cartoon Network has some of the finest cartoons that have ever been made, and it's hard to actually get a hold of a lot of them nowadays.
Yeah. Many of them aren't even on DVD.
I was just gonna say like that blows my mind, especially in this age of like reboots and nostalgia. Is like
because you could totally just
it's a safe bet. Like if they were like, hey, we're going to release, like, the complete series of Johnny Bravo or Ed, Ed and Eddie.
That's one that I would say.
Which statistically is one of their best-rated shows.
Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorites.
That is the safest bet. It'll make money back quadruple fold, fan service, and it could kickstart another renaissance era for Cartoon Network, and yet it's not being
done. Another note, can we acknowledge the fact that Ed, Ed and Eddie, in my opinion at least, has one of the most satisfying endings to any like TV show.
Oh, what, Big Picture show?
Yeah,
I agree. That's
the thing. Ed, Ed and Eddie and Hey Arnold.
Hey Arnold too
are the two that I would say have that. Because Ed, Ed and Eddie's Big Picture show had the most amount of tie-ins to previous like one-shot mention stuff before it went above and beyond with some of the jokes that they were allowed to do. Like, whether or not you think that the sextant joke is funny, it was pushing a boundary.
Sure.
And it also pushed more boundaries because it touched on some of the most serious subjects I've ever seen in any cartoon. Like severe domestic abuse that is so instilled in somebody, and not just one person, but so many people, that it terrorizes them. And that is one of the most satisfying things to see come to a close. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
And especially in Eddie's case, it was super emotional because it was so traumatizing. He was in denial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you
that's why it hits home when you get to that part.
Like, for the longest time, you think Eddie's this scumbag character for the whole show. Really, like there's not that many redeeming qualities to him.
No, there aren't. You have every reason to hate him.
And then at the very end, everything feels justified.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like you get that moment where it's just like, you know what? I understand.
Yeah. And that's why it remains one of their most popular shows, because it didn't treat their audience like kids.
Yeah.
It treated their audience like people.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll use that as a moment to lead into what I would say. So I guess I'll cheat because I have two. And I'm going specifically for one from Cartoon Network and one from Nick.
All right.
And I'll start with Nick. This might seem like an obvious choice for a lot of people, and I agree with you on this because it's as good as it is. But Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the best cartoons ever made. And I actually usually consider it to be an anime because it is fully an anime in my opinion. Like, it's animated in that fashion. It's got a similar setup to a lot of anime.
I think a lot of people consider
we used to call it kaname, like cartoon anime.
I always called it Amerime.
Amerime, yeah.
which like that and Teen Titans.
Because that was like the era where like Teen Titans and Avatar, they both came out around the same time.
And Kappa Mikey.
Even Samurai Jack to an extent too.
Which I'll get to because that's my
that's your other. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Avatar: The Last Airbender. Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konitso, something like that. They had lightning in a bottle with that show. It came out at the perfect time.
Yes, it did.
It, like, 2004, I want to say, was when it initially came out.
Right.
Something about that.
Yeah.
So it was hitting us when we were like 12, 13. And the characters aged with us because the characters stayed teenagers.
Yeah.
So the show ended on a note that we could, at some level, resonate with. It's sort of like how, like, we also aged with Harry Potter and we aged with Toy Story. We happened to hit this special timeline.
Yeah.
Where somehow we magically lined everything up.
Right.
Which was amazing. But Avatar didn't try to be anything but itself. And what it was trying to be was a show that wanted to tell a very specific story with characters that they wanted to write in the very specific way. And they didn't want to cut corners.
Yes.
The cast, one of the best casts you'll ever see in a voiceover. Mako, in particular, I always bring attention to Iroh whenever I talk about some of the best animated characters. Period. Iroh is one of the most well-written characters. His character design is very, very easy to love and connect with because he feels like your grandfather or your uncle, as he is to Zuko. His love for his nephew always shines through, and you see his the way that he wishes that Zuko was his son who he lost, and you see the heartbreak in so much of Mako's performances when Zuko is lost on his journey where he ends up working with Aang.
Yeah.
And you see his heartbreak with the fact that his brother, Fire Lord Ozai, is just a warmonger. And it's sad to see this character who has suffered so much in his life just try to save the next generation from the previous generation's sins.
Right.
And that's a character that I feel has an impact, especially today, because in the current socio-political climate, it feels like people our age are at constant under attack of people that are older than us.
Sure.
And I'm not, and I don't try and get political on the show, but I'm just trying to make a connection to why this character feels so impactful. Because he feels like someone who is actually trying to work with the new generation, who's trying to make the world a better place. So he's such a good character to connect with that. And I've talked a little bit about Avatar on the show as well with one of my recent videos from this past season. But you can't get a better cast than Aang, Katara, Sokka, Toph, Zuko, Iroh, Azula. These are all fantastic characters that evolve and age properly. They feel like they're aging in the way that they are in the show and who they are in, the voice actors in real life. And it's so special. You guys would probably agree with me on that. This is a show that I think we all definitely felt something with.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, fun fact, I believe the series is on sale as of today. I think it's $20.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
I was thinking about getting it.
I would definitely do that. I recently got the Blu-ray release, and it's such a beautiful transition.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it looks nice.
Oh my goodness! I actually might buy this right now. Because yeah, I remember.
Justin just has his laptop up, and he's got the page for. Look at the artwork for the Blu-ray.
Oh my
case.
goodness!
The Avatar State Aang, that is just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's usually
add to cart.
It's usually 30 or 35 or.
But yeah, it's just such a special series because it aged perfectly with us.
It did, yeah.
And this leads me to my other choice from Cartoon Network. Gendy Tartakovsky and Samurai Jack.
Oh man.
This is
a tour de force.
This is a show that was not designed to be a kids show.
Right.
From the start.
They made that apparent too.
And obviously they had to adhere to the executive's decisions, so you never saw blood in the initial few seasons. It was always oil because he was always fighting robots.
Right.
And Samurai Jack brings a lot of reminiscent stuff to 70s samurai films, which were bloody. Bright red paint blood.
Oh, yeah.
Spraying from everywhere. People losing limbs. You can see the influence.
Yeah.
And the best parts of Samurai Jack are, in my opinion, some of the more artsy stuff in it. Because half of the time in Samurai Jack, there's no dialogue.
Yeah,
a lot of the
makes
time,
it that much darker.
A lot of the time, it's literally just Jack by himself in these fantastical environments and him just walking.
Yeah.
Until he experiences something that he feels he should interject into.
Yeah.
And these can range from helping an army of Trojan soldiers to his incident with the Scotsman on several occasions to him going to a rave and dealing with the evil rave master.
Which I think is one of my favorite episodes.
I mean, come on. It's so good.
Yeah.
And then you also have the other side of this with Aku, who is a really well-defined villain. He's hilarious. He's threatening.
Yeah.
And once again, guess who voices this boy? It's our friend Mako, who played Iroh.
Which, rest in peace.
Yes.
Because he was fantastic.
Mako is one of the finest actors and / voice actors you will ever have the pleasure of hearing his voice.
Yeah, from Avatar, TMNT. He was even in a Steve McQueen movie called The Sand Pebbles. He was in a lot of shit.
I remember he was in a few episodes of MASH.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, with MASH they only had a small pool of Asian actors to work with. So,
right.
So Mako happened to be one of them at one point.
That's cool.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I like that.
So you have Mako, who's bringing this fantastic villain to life, and Phil Lamar, the man, bringing Samurai Jack to life.
Oh man,
which I think we can all agree, Phil Lamar's the man. Yeah,
Phil Lamar's the man.
Because, and that's one of the things that I've actually heard a little bit of complaints about recently with the Apu controversy on The Simpsons. And I understand where some of these complaints come from, and I certainly don't want to seem like someone who's going to be treated differently for my views on cartoons of all things.
Yeah,
but a cartoon character is defined by their voice. The animation comes right after the voice. It's a very close race on what defines the character, but it's the voice that stands out the most. And with Apu being voiced by Hank Azaria, who is a white guy, and that's fine because he's just providing a voice. And while it's a caricature, the character is actually well written. He's one of the few characters in The Simpsons that's actually written well, and given humanity.
One of the things that with the whole Apu complaints is that I rarely hear them mention Apu's arcs.
Yeah,
it's always they
always focus on the caricature.
I understand that you might find it offensive, but at the same time, I wish that when we have those conversations, we don't stop it at a surface level. We go deeper.
Yeah.
I wish we would also talk about the arcs that Apu got. Because he got quite a few in The Simpsons.
Yeah, and this brings me back to Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
Which, if a white man is not allowed to voice an Indian man, then why is a black man allowed to voice a Japanese man? It's the same argument, but you don't care because Samurai Jack is a good character. He's not played to be a stereotypical racist caricature of a person. He's a person.
Right.
He experiences emotions. He has these turmoils that he goes through all the time. And because he's written to be a human, which I think Apu is written to be as well. Sure, there's caricature aspects of his race at face value, but on deeper levels, he's written like a person.
Right.
In one episode, he cheats on his wife and he tries to commit suicide. That's a human. That's not a caricature of a race. That's just a person.
Yeah.
Experiencing a very strong emotion. And Jack goes through emotions like that too.
For sure.
His struggles with his inner self in one of the episodes, and then the entire last season, which aired last year. Which, by the way, if you've never seen Samurai Jack, now is the time, because the whole series is finally done. Much like Ed, Edd and Eddy, this series finally got an ending, and it was the ending the show deserved. This show was given the right to be bloody. It was given the right to swear. It was given the right to be sexy.
Yeah.
It was allowed to be the adult show that it wasn't trying to avoid being. And once again, this is a show that aged with us. This was a show that came out, I want to say 2001.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
it
were
was around
young.
that, yep.
We were young, and I wouldn't say I liked Samurai Jack when I was a kid because I didn't understand.
It was very different. I remember like watching it, and it stood out because, like you said, there's a lot of episodes where he's just kind of walking, and I remember just thinking to myself, like, is he gonna say something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's quiet and there's nothing going on.
Yeah.
And we're at that age where we just want to see like big flashy things, which is why we like Powerpuff Girls so much. But when we look back at that show, we see the actual good writing and not just the action.
Yeah.
But with Samurai Jack, we have the mental capacity to appreciate the quiet moments between the action and the dialogue of Jack and his travels.
For sure.
And I think that defines this series into not only a great cartoon, but a great piece of fiction and art. Which I think this is something that I want to end on. Why can't cartoons be considered just as important an art form as film or television in general?
I think the simple answer to that is because it's newer. It's been around less time. The people who have established a name for the film industry, they kind of see it as a lesser thing because it wasn't something that they really did. Film has been around for hundreds of years at this point. Cartoons, let's say maybe 90 or so years. I think maybe it goes back a little bit further.
Definitely. There's definitely old cartoons that might have sprouted out, and I
Like
want to say the
20s.
very late 1890s. Like
Yeah.
there's some old
There's
stuff.
some-
Like there,
some
I
old ones,
want to
alright.
say there's some really old cartoons.
But still, like,
but
it's
it
still
wasn't-
a relatively young
yeah.
field in comparison to TV, in comparison to film.
To film, let's
To
say.
film,
'cause
yeah. In comparison to film.
Film's been around for over 100 years.
Right.
Right. Well, the thing too to remember is that animation was always viewed as supplementary.
Exactly.
And whether you're looking at stop motion or just like traditional 2D hand drawn, it always seemed more as a supplementary platform to get the actual message across. I mean, there's plenty of examples of that, but I guess like just to keep it simple, it really is like I feel like animation really it kind of, when people view it from the outside looking in, it seems like taboo. It's like, wait a second, this isn't real life. So off the bat, it gets a bad rap.
Right.
And then like how you were mentioning with anime earlier, people look at it and they're like, oh, like a bunch of weebs and whatever, like they don't understand the culture, but it's like it's a deep appreciation for a new art form.
And it also doesn't help that, unfortunately, animation has been used for kind of like spreading evil and propaganda in the past too.
Oh yeah,
Unfortunately, but
I recently got Momotaro, the Sacred Sailors, which was Japanese propaganda during World War II, and it was really interesting to watch because, fun fact, some of the caricatures that they had for Americans, like they would have us with like oni horns,
right.
Yeah.
and I loved the fact.
Is that the one where it's like there's a plane and Mickey Mouse is in the plane?
No.
Because there's another animation where
It might be some. I think it's something somewhat related, but this is one where they go to this special naval air force goes to this island to take out the American troops, and some of the troops, like they're Popeye and Bluto, are two of the troops there, which
Right.
I think is hilarious in retrospect.
Right, sure.
But like that's what they basically thought we were. They thought we were brutes who just wanted to get our way.
Right.
And in a way, like when I look at anime in this day and age, the Japanese culture has leaned in and embraced anime because it has impacted their media in such a huge way.
Right.
Whereas Sam and I will say that directors like Yasujiro Ozu and Akira Kurosawa defined film not only in Japanese film culture but also American film culture.
I'd argue American more. So
I would too.
Yeah.
The Japanese animation world is still sort of being opened up into America, and people I still think have that, and it might just be some level of xenophobia still, because World War II was not that long ago.
It was not.
So there might still be some level of xenophobia in that transition into this modern age, where like in the 60s there were hugely popular anime with Astro Boy, Sally the Witch, and Gegege no Kitaro. But the American audience didn't get a taste of anime that they thought was acceptable or were willing to look into until the late 80s, and I would say that Akira was one of the biggest influences in anime,
undeniably
being brought in and accepted.
Yeah.
And while anime and cartoons have similar parents in terms of an art form, both of them still need to be looked into and accepted as an art form on the same level. Because we've had experiences where animated films have actually outtaken live action films for, like, quote unquote important awards.
Sure, yeah.
Beauty and the Beast and Spirited Away won Academy Awards for Best Film.
Yeah.
I think Spirited Away won Best Film, not just Best Animated.
Yeah.
So these are films that actually beat out live action films because they were so beautiful, so well written, that people connected in the way that they do with live action.
Sure.
And one of the things that I love about animation so much is because people everywhere can connect with an animated character.
Sure.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter your race or creed, you can look at a cartoon character and you can relate to them.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, just plain and simple, cartoons capture imaginations. Everybody daydreams. A cartoon, you can connect your daydreams to a cartoon in a way that you cannot do with live action.
Yeah. That's true.
Any closing words from you two?
I like cartoons.
I do too.
Cartoons are funny.
They are. Cartoons mean a lot to us.
Yeah, they do.
For sure.
And I definitely think that if any of you have a particular favorite cartoon or favorite cartoon moment that you think influenced you in a really big way, comment it. I would love to know stuff that means a lot to you. That lets us connect with each other and see new things.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you so much, lovely ladies and gentlemen, for listening to this quite long Opera Glasses.
Quite lengthy.
I'm very happy to have had you boys on the show, and I'm looking forward to instances where I get to do this again with one or either of you.
No, it'll be a fun night.
And once again, I've been the Pro Gent. Thank you for listening. This has been Sam from Silver Screen Fiends.
Hello. Goodbye.
And this has been Justin Guillot.
Hope you all had a great time. See you later.
Thanks, everybody.